Good afternoon. Our presentation is about addressing risk situation through measures designed to prevent and combat social exclusion of Romanian children from transnational families. And this work is a part of the research project financed through a cloud program supported by the Ministry of Research, Innovation and Digitalization, project title Effects of Migration Experience on Families, Children and Community Left Behind, Methods of Assessment and Strategy for Mitigating the Risk of Social Exclusion. This project is implemented by the National Scientific Research Institute for Level and Social Protection, institute where me, Anila Matei, and my colleague Christina Stroyer are scientific researchers. What do we approach in our presentation? We talk about phenomena of children with parents working abroad, and we present some indicators, social indicators reflecting the phenomenon. In order to set up the methodological framework, we present measure and program designed to prevent and combat the social exclusion of the left behind children. Then we present the methodological approach of our research, the results, and finally conclusion and a recommendation. The mobility of people between the state of the European Union for work, it's an objective of the European community, and it's addressed with varying degree of generality in the founding treaty of the Union, in its regulation, directive, and decision. Community legislation has been enriched and adapted as the difficulties encountered by transnational families, especially minor children, have been identified. Thus, the European Union is constantly improving the legislative framework context for maintaining the unity in transnational families defined in the literature as a new family model with the following characteristic: geographical dispersion of the family caused by migration, maintenance of the relationship between the family members across borders, and the construction of a collective welfare and unity. Since Romania's entry into European Union, the number of migrant workers has steadily increased, but the recent economic crisis has slowed the immigration process as the circular and return economy was intensified. Poverty has been a marked phenomenon for vulnerable groups in Romania, with significant increase over time, but also with some important decrease, especially in recent years, not being fully absorbed by the appropriate economic and social development process. With the worsening of poverty and its severe and extreme form, the placement of subsegments of population in despair of this social risk has led to ongoing vulnerability and challenges. Among the group most affected by poverty and social exclusion have been children and families with dependent children. Social indicators show that over the period 2010-2020 at national level, Eurostat data show particularly high incidence of the social risk associated with the poverty and social exclusion, both at the level of entire population and also among children and family with children. Permanently, children are most at risk of poverty and social exclusion compared to all other age group and total population. The composition on different type of household has a strong influence on the poverty incidence and the risk increase in household with dependent children. The poverty affecting the single person carry one child vary over the period 2010-2020 around 13-14%, which means a high incidence. The presence of children among single parents households differentiate poverty quite a lot, with a gap ranging between 3 and 11 percentage points. Almost permanently, the presence of children in single parents household leading to a much higher poverty rate. By contrast, in 2020, there is a significant decrease in the poverty rate, which falls below 30%, and represent a minimum value for the decade under review. This remarkable minimum in the poverty rates for single parents family with dependent children could be due to the increase in the state child allowance that took place in 2020, which led to an increase in household income and thus a reduction in poverty level even amidst increase in inflation. The extent of poverty and the lack of perspective for a better standard of living, together with a multitude of other factors, have been a real reason for many people to go abroad to ensure their survival or a decent living. Definitive emigration has recorded a most continuous upward trend with substantial rate since 2015, and this aspect has been recorded both national and in all macro region of the country, in some cases even doubling the incidence of definitive immigration cases. Alongside permanent immigration, temporary immigration, which it's based on going abroad for a period of at least 12 months, it's another option for those who are driven to change their place of residence, leaving the county for various socioeconomic reasons. Being easier than permanent immigration, temporary immigration was even 50 times higher than the involving permanent settlement in another country. Even though in recent years, specific statistical indicators have been on a downward trend, both in terms of the number of children whose parents are working abroad and the number of children left at home in the special protection system, those values recorded in the last reference year are still significant. These significant figures are alarm signals, as even today, 1 in 3 children with parents who have emigrated for work, it's without parental care, which leads to a deepening of the difficulty faced by these vulnerable children, and also by parents, carers on dependent children, which leave a particularly strong mark on the minds of many of them. Many of these vulnerable children need support, not only psychological one, but also educational counseling, then employed counseling, as well as medical and social services. In a word, integrated social services addressing a broad spectrum of specific needs. In addition to this risk, cumulatively vulnerable children may also face the risk of poverty and social exclusion, as it is known that the phenomenon of parents emigration going abroad to work, it's particularly marked in the area counties with the highest incidence of poverty, which further exacerbate the problem of those households, local community, and not only. The largest cluster of poverty are found in the northeastern part of the country, where there is also a higher number of children whose parents have gone abroad to work. Starting from the associated risk with the phenomenon of parents going abroad to work, a number of national strategy legislative frameworks have been developed for the social protection of such group in order to overcome the vulnerability they face. We talk about national strategy, namely National Strategy on the Protection and Promotion of Children's Rights, and National Strategy and Social Inclusion and Poverty Reduction. And legislative documents, Law on the Protection and Promotion of the Rights of the Children, Section 4, a special section dedicated to those children left behind, and government decision number 691 for the approval of the procedure for monitoring the raising and care of the children with parents working abroad and the services they may benefit from, as well as for the approval of the working methodology on the comparison between the General Directorates for Social Assistance and Child Protection and the Public Social Assistance Services and the standard model of documents drawn up by them. In our research, we have 2 questions. How well approached is the phenomenon of transnational feminism in Romania, and what is the effectiveness of the Romanian measure and program addressing the phenomenon of left behind children? For the first research question, we will use as a method document analysis, institutional document from the central public authorities being investigated units. For the second question, a research question, we use a SWOT analysis. We investigate the same institutional documents. How well approaches the phenomenon of transnational families in Romania? Document is selected where National Strategy on the Protection and Promotion of Children's rights and national strategy on social inclusion and poverty reduction. For the legislative framework, we select law on the protection and promotion of the rights of the children, Section 4, and procedure for monitoring the raising and care of children with parents working abroad and the services they may benefit from, as well as for the approval of the working methodology on the cooperation between general directorates for social assistance and child protection and the public social assistance services, and the standard model of the documents drawn up by them. We analyze relationship between poverty and left behind children, list of measure program designed for transnational families left behind children, and contextual data used to justify measure. For the second question, what is the effectiveness of the Romanian measure and programs addressing the phenomenon on left behind children? We develop a SWOT analysis. We analyze based on the data analyzed using document analysis method, strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat of the implementation of the intended measure and program for left behind children were established. The results show that the analysis, apart from the measures specified by law, no specific program had been developed on national level to address the issue of children with parents who had gone to work outside the country. From the perspective of the child protection and ensuring the rights of children whose parents are working abroad, according to the legislation, intervention are provided from an integrated perspective, covering the issue related to psychological support, educational counseling, medical services. The analysis indicates that the basic legislation does not provide a set of measure and program for the protection of children whose parents have gone to work abroad, except directly to the special protection mentioned above, namely the action of special protection system for those children, supplemented by the identification of potential causes and factors that generate this phenomenon of emigration of parents with impact on children left in the country, with steps to be followed by local institutions, public social assistance service to ensure the protection of these vulnerable children. So, analysis of the Romanian program and measure for left behind children set up the following straight points. Well-developed legislative framework to address the phenomenon, existence of a procedure for monitoring the raising and care of children with parents working abroad. As a weakness point, poor monitoring of the implementation of legislative provision and the lack of a general framework for operating the collaboration between the institutional actors involved in the management of this phenomenon. As opportunities, the main opportunities, the development of the European legal framework for the protection of transnational families, and as a threats, parental distrust in social protection institutions, and lack of human resources at the local level in the social protection system. So, as a conclusion and recommendation, in the context of the development of the phenomenon of transnational families and transnational parenting, children left behind by parents migrating for work outside Romania are a social problem that needs special attention from public authorities, especially in the case of children without maternal care. Finding the best way to meet the needs of transnational families in order to protect the rights of children left behind become a complex task for policymakers who need to develop appropriate tools to enable them to carry out the function of transnational families. Despite the existence of legal provision to quantify the phenomenon, its magnitude is not surprised by official data, especially in the case of family where the parents are not the only supporter of the family. There is also a lack of evaluation of intervention program for this phenomenon, which are underdeveloped and which could provide solution for an effective intervention strategy in this area of social vulnerability. Thank you very much for your attention.